markets open in Asia today. I'd say little change, moving sideways. But after a big jump recovery last week, up over 10%. Once again, Omar Najia, global head of derivatives of BB Energy, called the market right a week ago on Monday when he said it would end the week higher after a few weeks of declines. Omar, Monday morning again, how do you see this week? Fairly vibrant upward swing last week.
So market went higher. I think it's got considerably higher to go, new highs, all this kind of stuff. And I think everybody's in denial. So people still don't understand this, that Russia has said that you need to pay in rubles. Why? Because if I was selling, let's say I'm selling a car. If I'm selling you a car and you give me beans, there's not a lot I could do with it. It's useless to me. In the same way, because of sanctions, the euro and the USD are useless to Russia. They can't do anything with them. They're sanctioned. So it's like giving them paper or lettuce. It's absolutely useless. So what they've said, and people still don't get it, is that we don't.
Omar, just make the connection for me as to how that immediately impacts the oil market this week or this cycle, if you like. Obviously, it's a very significant development over the mid to long term, but in the immediate term, how does it technically impact the market direction?
So Putin has said that the clock isn't going to start at some future point. The clock started April 1st, right? So basically with oil, you don't prepay, you pay what you eat, so to speak. So the clock's already going. So you've been eating for free and you finished your meal and the bill's coming. You understand? So the bill is coming. It depends. Some people, it'll be the end of April. For other people, basically, it'll be the middle of May. But the bill's coming. When that bill hits, comes in front of you, you have to pay it. Now, you can do one of two things. You can pay it, but they're telling you we're not going to accept your currency because it's absolutely useless to us. Or basically, the other thing that they've said is you don't pay, you don't get any gas. You see, so the way that everything is going is that everybody's kind of, everything will be okay. And, Europe, I was reading one of the stories, Europe can come off, dependence on Russian gas very quickly. And that's again
quicker than that was the Italian prime minister over the weekend.
Yes, yeah, Draghi. So basically, look, I can get down from this building, I can take the lift, or I can get down really quickly by jumping out the window. One is going to absolutely flatten me, and the other one I'm going to be okay. So it's so ridiculous, and it's not. Maybe it might not be ridiculous to people reading the story, but people in the industry, you read stuff like that, and you don't just laugh, you just ignore it. It's poppycock. It's terrible that anybody can say stuff like that. There is no extra magical. It's like they say, the US LNG. All the LNG in the US is private companies and it's all been sold. Yes, you can buy it, but you've got to pay these private companies a higher number than they have already. It's not like it's kind of waiting there for people to come and buy this oil or this gas. It doesn't exist. You're going to have to fight for it. And the only way you fight for it is pay more. So this market is going to get hit across the face big time. And there's going to come a moment of realization. I think basically today is still a holiday in Europe. So when the market starts going, and the other thing is Europe has to fill these gas tanks, these reserves by the middle of April. And it's already past that. So Europe is going to have a problem. Whatever happens, if all sanctions are lifted today and they start pumping at max today, they won't be able to fill their storage by winter. They will not be able to do it. So basically what you're going to see, I think,
which is gas now you're talking now, switching between two there, but obviously natural gas. Yeah.
Gas. So people basically are going to see this and they're going to start buying anything they can, paper, futures, whatever it is. And as the longer time ticks, the more they're going to buy. So it's going to be like a parabolic thing because it's going to be absolute panic. Everything's going to be okay because, last week it was COVID is going to help. And the week before it was like the SPRs, the rescue. So they've really, everything that you wanted to do to the market, what else are you going to do? SPR, done. COVID, done. Europe can move quicker, done. Sanctions done. So what are you going to do? Ask OPEC, ask Iran. No, no, no. Ask Venezuela. All of it's done. Now it's time for people like me to come up, put the money on the table, and say higher, in your face, higher, higher, higher. So let's see what happens.
Let's go to Narendra Taneja, India's leading energy expert. Narendra, in your face, higher. What does that mean for India? Already downgrading your economic growth this year, as of last week, was downgraded
to 8%.
Yeah.
Yeah, but 8% for an economy of India's size is huge still, and it's still the fastest growing economy on the planet. Even at 8%, look at the size of our economy on close to $3 trillion nominal basis. On PPP basis, an $8 trillion economy. So if it grows 8%, this means everything to the whole world, a lot. So, well, that said, the point is, of course, when prices go up, it's a terribly bad news for our economy, for the consumer. But I think the important point that we have to understand, and we are beginning to understand it in New Delhi and several other capitals, that the world order in terms of oil, the oil world order has begun to change, fundamentally change. And we got to recognize, even if you look at, for instance, the immediate future, like the next 7 days or 7 weeks, we have to keep in mind that the global oil order has begun to change fundamentally. And the global economic Cold War has begun. It has started. It's there. Now we have to accept it, and we have to understand that since the collapse of the Soviet Union, or the end of the Cold War, oil has been the biggest beneficiary. Oil became practically, and for all practical purposes, it actually became a global commodity. Now that's being challenged, and this is going to be challenged. You see, so what we are beginning to see is, and as I said, oil has been the biggest beneficiary of globalization. What we are witnessing now, this week, is the beginning of deglobalization, which means that we will have the Western part of the world, or the OECD part on the one hand, including Japan, Australia, New Zealand, and and several other countries, and also part India, not fully, but part India. And you will have China and Russia and some other country on the other side. I'm talking strictly oil. You see, this is what has begun to happen. So far, everything was dominated by dollar, dominated by Western narrative. China sees this as an opportunity to be on the one side, to be seen with the West, but at the same time, start basically writing a new narrative for oil. And
where is given India? Where is India in this new world order that you are articulating? I'm still trying to quite understand from a point of view of oil new world order. China, of course, is the world's largest oil importer. I doubt it would be able to tolerate too much restructuring to an order in which it is heavily dependent oil, let's say, coming from the Middle East, if that was to change.
Well, good question. Good question. The point is, these things don't happen overnight. India is smart enough. China is smart enough. They can see it. But for instance, if Russia, launches this expedition and China chips in to the extent possible, India also sees some benefit it too, in order to create a new oil world order, which is more just, more equal. It's not entirely dominated by US currency or by the Western narrative. I mean, many other countries are going to basically, jump the bandwagon. Now, the point here is that, this is a slow beginning, but it is going to have impact on oil prices. When you see the news, for instance, the Russian minister, just a minister, not a company head, offers cheap oil to India, the West gets completely, they go crazy. What's happening? Not understanding the entire thing is misplaced, because India doesn't buy much oil from Russia anyway. We never bought more than 2% total requirement.
Without getting too swallowed by that rabbit hole of whether you do or do not take in discounted Russian oil. Obviously, the Ukrainians would prefer that you didn't, and would prefer that nobody does, including the Europeans. But the Europeans are now moving, it would appear, towards sanction. But nonetheless, you brought up this idea of a new world order in terms of oil anyway, and then perhaps the geopolitics of that. You kind of hedged, as India seems to be doing. India's kind of in it, but not in it. Are you indicating that India would be geopolitically and geostrategically looking to realign actually as a partner to China rather than as what is generally regarded as a counter to China? As only a few weeks ago, you said that Europe and America needs to wake up and get to Asia to counter the rise of China. Are you indicating now that India would actually partner with China in this new order?
No, it's not that black and white. It's not that simple. The point is that, India is very closely aligned with the West. We are a democracy. Our economic system is the same. Education system is the same. So we are at home when we deal with America, with Western Europe, Japan, Australia, New Zealand. We are at home because we may look different, but we are the same in terms of how we look at the world, how we look at the thing. But at the same time, we are a friend and a partner. We are not a follower of any country. Problem is the West looks upon India as if they want us to be a follower. We are not follower. We are a huge country. We're going to see our interests, and we are definitely.
You have Prime Minister Johnson coming to you today. You don't have Prime Minister Modi going to London, right? So I mean that tells its own story in terms of where the bigger shoe is.
Every second day we have some minister, some prime minister, some king, some queen coming to Delhi. Every second day. We had just had a Russian foreign minister also. So that's happening because India is important. Some people in Africa is very important.
I think that is a recognition by the UK, one of the G7 permanent members of the Security Council, that India is very important.
No, the recognition is welcome, but the point is that we have our own worldview. Our worldview is very simple. West is very important for us. Democratic world is very, very important for us, close to our heart. But at the same time, we look at our other interests. We also see, for instance,
but you do recognize that you at this moment, for obviously it's your choice, and nobody's denying that you have the choice, because as you say, you are a democracy and you are a part of the family of democracies. But as part of the family of global democracies, India is currently an outlier in terms of its position on the Ukraine-Russian conflict. Let's just leave that for a second and go to Laurie. Poor old Laurie. We got to give Laurie a chance.
You didn't allow me to speak. This is a very important point you're making. Yes, you view India as an outlier. We are not. We are with the democratic world. But at the same time,
no. But come on, you have to acknowledge at this moment. But you can't say what I'm saying is wrong.
You don't let me speak. That's not.
I am. Okay, go.
You're imposing your view on me. Don't do that.
It's not a view.
Democratic world.
Tell me one other democratic country that hasn't condemned this Russian position.
That's the problem.
Serbia.
Serbia? Okay, thank you.
Serbia, there you go. If you want another, let me know.
We are never going to be a follower. We are never going to be a follower. We have our own worldview. We are part of the democratic world, but we have our own worldview. You have your own way of looking at China and Russia. We have our own way. We respect yours. You have to respect ours.
Okay. And it's not mine, by the way, but nonetheless, I do share it. Laurie, and obviously sitting in Beirut, where democracy is under very fragile threat, and hopefully will continue to be part of the nations of democracy. Let's talk more fundamentals, supply and demand. Libya is struggling at the moment to meet what it has been doing, 1.2 million barrels of oil a day. There seems to be a lot of political turmoil there now, ports shutting, fields shutting down. What's the latest in that picture in terms of, again, this demand or supply squeeze?
Definitely, as we said early, since December 2021, we said, keep an eye on Libya, because now nobody cares about what's happening in Libya, but the situation is very critical. And this political crisis there has a consequence on the oil and gas, because as you see today, we are getting news every moment saying that the Sharara field is closed, the field is closed, the Elephant. So these are the two big fields. Two of the main terminals are closed, so refineries could be affected. So all of that is very important, because when everybody's talking that maybe by May 2022, we will have 3 million barrels of the Russian oil off the market, adding to it this around like 1 million or less from the Libyan fields, that's a lot of oil that is off the market. So I think very important to say that it's very critical what's happening on the political level in Libya. What I'm afraid of is nobody cares, and there is no mediator to find a solution. So they're left on their own. Maybe the Europeans could do something, but they don't have that much leverage. The Italians today that get gas from the Libyans are more interested in working with the Algerians because it's more stable, because they can rely more, because the quantities are more, and they can't maybe do much in Libya and what's happening in Libya. So it's something to keep an eye on. I am really not sure like who's going to do anything on Libya. So maybe we need to think of that there will be barrels out of the market.
Laurie, I wanted to get your view also on the East Med visit last week by the Undersecretary of the State from the US, who was in Cyprus, then in Turkey. It appeared they, in their visit, restructured the sort of geopolitical alignments there vis-a-vis energy flowing out of the East Med. What's your takeaway from the visit last week, which seemed to elevate Turkey's position in the East Med?
Look, we're back kind of to these kind of this energy rivalry between Egypt and Turkey, because currently, if Europe needs gas, the quick fix, and even not that quick, is through the LNG terminals in Egypt. That is already ready. They need a bit of expansion. Gas could flow from Egypt, gas could flow from Israel into these terminals, and through LNG go to Europe. That is the quickest fix we have for any alternative from the Eastern Mediterranean. The Turkey side, it's like it's for the future and the near future. So if you need to build pipelines that go from Israel or the fields in the Eastern Mediterranean, let's say Israel, Egypt, Cyprus maybe, through gas to Turkey and from Turkey to Europe. That does require, if you want, guarantees from the Europeans or from the policymakers to say that, yes, we need gas beyond the 10-year target because of the energy transition. I think, and there you have here with you people that understand more the market and than me, the issue is that if you need more investment, companies need to know that whatever investment they will make, that they will have a return on investment. If you don't have signs from Europe that, yes, we will be needing gas and more gas beyond the 2030, beyond 2040, who's going to invest that kind of money when they know that maybe it will be for 5 or 6 years, and after that, okay, so who's going to use the gas? So no one is going to invest in new projects that goes to Europe unless Europe says, yes, I need your gas beyond 10 years.
They have to, I think, also, as you say, strongly indicate that the energy transition, as one commentator earlier in the week called it, the European hysteria over the energy transition. They can't have both, right? They can't have this immediate solution and at the same token maintain all these obstructions. Omar, you said earlier that it's in your face, i.e. there's nothing left on the list to derail this, what appears to be ultimately a supply squeeze out of Russia. Ultimately, I mean, maybe Russian oil continues to flow.
No, it's not a supply squeeze. It's basically the
supply squeeze, I said.
No, it's not. It's basically, so the EU has shot itself in one foot and then the other, and then the elbow, and then the elbow. And now it's going to shoot itself through this temple and then that temple. And it's going to basically, so this is self-induced.
So that is a supply squeeze, isn't it? I mean,
Well, no, I mean, supply is there. So what people don't get is, so China is not going to be paying massive numbers for oil. India is not going to be paying the numbers that you see up on the screen. Europe.
Why does oil go up then if there's not a supply squeeze?
Okay, because basically what the way that the market is that the oil that you see on the screen prices in different regions. It just happens that the futures here price in the US and price in Europe, or what was Europe, in the UK. So they're going up because basically people in these parts of the world are going to basically pay, let's say oil costs $100. So the West is going to pay $100 plus $50 premium. And India is going to pay $100 minus $50 premium. And China is going to pay $100 minus $50 premium. So if you add the minus 50 and the plus 50, you still get $100.
But is that not making an assumption that the Urals blend solves everybody's problem? We saw only a few weeks ago, Saudi Arabia sold premium on its OSP, of which most of the Middle East producers followed, way above, I think it was nearly a record OSP into Asian refiners,
Yeah, because
despite the
everybody,
discount of Urals.
no, hasn't started yet. I mean, I mean, everything takes time. You know, in this age where you press a button, something appears at your door. These things take time. So it's coming. It's like what I was talking before. It's like people go out, they look at the sea and they say, oh, there's no waves. And there's a massive tsunami coming. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, I can't show it to you today, but just wait, it's coming. And you're going to feel it. And so the big idea is that at the end of the day, this is a quote unquote manufactured crisis. It's not going to go away. It's going to get worse. It's going to get a lot worse. It's going to get worse for the euro. It's going to get worse for the dollar. And it's going to get worse economically for everybody. And it's going to basically be.
Well, there lies the answer perhaps to your question. What else might destroy demand? Let's go to Narendra again. We came to the first question, Narendra. The economic impact of elevated commodity costs, oil obviously at the top of the list, but gas, of course, and all other commodities. We're already seeing in China, due to COVID lockdowns, retail spending collapse by 3.5% in the first quarter, although GDP did grow 4.8%. India and other Asian, we're seeing the IMF and the World Bank downgrading global economic growth for all sorts of reasons. So I just want to get a greater sense from you. If we stay above 100 plus over the next 6 months, how is that likely to impact India's economic performance?
Well, you see, I mean, higher oil prices, higher natural gas prices have already started impacting our economy. Economy can feel the heat. Industry can feel the heat. Even the ordinary consumers across the country can feel the heat, and some of them are already protesting. It's something which is sitting on the front page of newspapers almost every day. It's on the top of the agenda of major political parties. And there are political parties, the ordinary consumers protesting. So that's already happening. And with that, of course, post-Ukraine, we also see edible oil prices going up, aluminum going up, metals going up. So across the board, you see that there's a kind of a bad situation. And especially for India's economy, which is heavily integrated with the global economy. So if oil goes beyond $100 on sustained basis or stay there for a longer period of time, 3 months or 6 months, terribly bad news for our economy. And that's precisely the reason that we think that, it's important the world can get together and find a solution over Ukraine. But at the same time, being a student, geopolitics and oil both, I don't really see that happening because the Western agenda is totally different. The agenda is not only to find a solution, but the agenda is completely different, to create a new world order which is more dominated by United States of Europe and United States of America. And they're facing challenge from other countries. So what we are basically seeing a huge threat to oil prices, huge threat to natural gas prices and supply, and also at some massive threat to energy transition. Energy transition and the climate debate is, these two are going to be kind of, the mass, the big victims of the whole thing. I mean, who would have time if oil prices go $125, who would have time for to talk about energy transition, talk about climate and so on and so forth. So I think the entire thing has been disrupted. While ideally speaking, it will be important to find a solution in Ukraine, but at the same time, don't disturb the global economic order. But that has been already done. It has gone for a toss. Now we have to see, how the world react. And especially for economies like India, which are emerging economies, the challenges are going to be much bigger than the European Union and the United States or Japan or even China for that matter. So I think economies like India, Indonesia, Brazil, Egypt, and others, they're going to face much bigger challenges. So we will have to basically look at this thing, and we'll have to look at the future, in terms of the windows which are more open to us and sustainable. While the West, you can look at the Russia is bad, China is bad, India is bad. You can carry on your own this thing, but we have to see how basically West has created this problem. They don't seem to be interested in finding a solution. But so we have to find, for instance, how to deal with those problems and at the same time maintain close tie with democracy, but at the same time look after our economic interests.
Laurie, the paradigm that Narendra paints there vis-a-vis the Middle East, we had a sort of two very public expressions over the weekend. One phone call between the de facto leader of Saudi Arabia and Russia, indicating very positive relationships around obviously OPEC. And we also had the happy Syria National Day to the president of Syria from leaders in the Gulf, which is a relatively new occurrence after 10 years of somewhat being on other sides of the field, if you like. Generally, how do you see the Middle East in this equation, this sort of, as Narendra points out, this sort of emerging new Cold War, this emerging divide? India is obviously trying to bridge two worlds in a way. Where does the Middle East look at the moment?
Look, as we said earlier, like it was an easy call, at least for the GCC and the OPEC, when this whole situation started and the war started between Russia and Ukraine. It was very easy because the Gulf countries were upset with the US policies and the US politics in the region, especially vis-a-vis the JCPOA and vis-a-vis this openness to Iran, and they felt that they were left out. And we heard last week that Secretary Blinken was saying that we apologize kind of to the UAE because we were late in replying to the attacks that happened on the UAE. So I think now the GCC and the Middle East is really playing like hard to get. So you don't want to support us, we will not support you. And we saw the situation. And I think the phone call between MBS and Putin talking about OPEC plus, the future of it, as I said, like if by May they are saying 3 million barrels will be off the market by the Russian oil. What does that mean? And on the 5th of May, we have the OPEC plus meeting. So does that mean that OPEC will have to produce more or not? So I think it's very critical so that they would coordinate together, so that they would feel that they're one unit against. And at the same time, you see there is a delegation from the US coming to the Middle East and going to India as well. So they will go to the UAE, they will go to India, kind of like to rally everyone behind the US, etc. So let's see what that will mean. Openness to Syria, normalization, this is something that is happening bit by bit. I don't know exactly for what end, but there is kind of a sense that maybe we should open up to Syria, and maybe that could put an end to the Iranian influence. But it's not very clear what's the aim of that openness to Syria is, but something that we are watching. It could be an interesting, because it could be like at the end of the day, it could be something related to energy. It could be the Arab gas pipeline if it needs to flow from Israel to Egypt via Jordan and Syria to Turkey. So then you would need to have Syria on board. Is that something that everybody is looking at? Is the UAE going to play that role of, because it's friend with everyone? So is Syria going to be at that place, that link that is still missing for gas to go to Turkey? And
what about, Laurie, sorry to interrupt, just because we're running out of time, I wanted to get your views on the Iran nuclear talks, which appear to be stumbling, if not falling. Your outlook for that?
I think, and maybe I'm mistaken, but I think that is left for after November.
After the US elections.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Omar, let's get the survey question in and then get everybody's view on the immediate outlook. What will have the biggest impact on direction of oil prices through Q2? Which of these four options do you think will have the biggest impact on the direction of oil prices through Q2? 1, 2, 3, or 4? None of them. There'll be all three, because it's a tug of war and there won't be any defective winner, because we've seen oil prices come up to 111, 112 before, drop down to 100, go back up again, as this tug of war between supply concerns versus demand concerns. Which do you think will determine the direction of oil prices going forward over Q2, or will it be a sort of back and forth tug of war? Omar, the more immediate week ahead, again, just to lead off the question to you, we had China give its sort of report card, health card today. Obviously, the impact of the COVID lockdowns are starting to squeeze demand there. Your outlook for that in the immediate sense? Last week, it seemed to have some bearing, but has dropped away for the oil markets, I mean.
Okay, so every time COVID's come up, the oil market basically ignores it and goes down. So I like it higher because of COVID and because of lockdowns, so higher. If the Europeans and the US release more SPR and all this kind of stuff like they've done before. I like it higher because, again, they've done so and the market's gone up. And the Ukraine-Russia war, I think basically right now is immaterial, because what's really important is not the war, but the sanctions. I think they last forever. I think this is a war between East and West that will last forever, and that, it's a zero-sum game. So somebody will win and somebody will lose. And I'll point you to a very interesting poll. So at the beginning of hostilities, quote unquote, they had a poll in the UK, and they asked people if they support like sanctions on Russia and all the rest of it, blah, blah, blah. And it was like 50% of people that said, yes, strongly support, et cetera, et cetera. They just did the poll over the weekend. And because, everything's skyrocketing, that support has gone from 50% down to 36%. So, and I don't think you've seen it yet. So I think it's going to get very interesting for all these, Western democracies. We see what happens to the French and Le Pen against Macron. Let's see.
Yep. Narendra, your thoughts on outlook? Obviously, we have the IMF World Bank meetings coming up in Washington and the expectations ahead of that. A lot of fairly negative outlook for global economic growth. What are your thoughts on the immediate direction of the oil market? Do you expect this up and down 1 to 100 and 110? Or do you think, as Omar might be indicating, we're going to break out to the higher side again?
Well, as I said, that the global oil world order has started already disintegrating, which means that, OPEC plus Russia that everybody keeps talking about, it will become irrelevant. Plus Russia will not be important. And if China from behind the scenes starts supporting Russia in terms of helping Russia to find buyers, across oceans, then I think it's going to be even bigger change. So which means that, you will have, of course, the market and all those things, and OPEC, other players in the market, and prices may go up $125 per barrel, so and so forth, depend on the Ukraine situation. But at the same time, you will have an alternative. Many developing economies, including economies in Asia and other parts of the world, will have an alternative if Chinese can help Russians to, for instance, in terms of tankers and insurance and payment mechanisms, which means that we will soon see the beginning of a new oil order, which is completely different from what, for instance, we have been used to since the collapse of the Soviet Union. So I think here we are talking about, on the one hand, the established oil world order, which is in play, and that's what you are focusing on. At the same time, I see the beginning of a new world order, which probably is going to be dominated by Russian oil, if supported by China, will become a strong force over a period of time. So we are back to the early 1970s, for instance, when India used to buy cheap oil from Soviet Union, but that oil always came from Iraq, never from the Soviet Union. If physically it was supplied by her, though the deal was always between India and the Soviet Union. So we are beginning now, coming back to the early 1970s. We're going to see two oil world orders, one dominated by the West, another dominated by Russia, China, plus other players. And who knows, some Western countries might also, behind the scene, directly and indirectly, may also join them. Who knows? So we are basically talking of turmoil, massive disruptions in terms of the way we have known the oil market since the collapse of the Soviet Union. It's a new world now.
Laurie,
and chaotic one.
Laurie, just last word to you. The survey result, the Russia-Ukraine continued to dominate through the second quarter. Inevitably, the world that Narendra is pointing to is significant, but ultimately maybe not this week. The markets at the moment caught in this tug of war between 100, 110. Do you think they break out on the upside?
I think we will still have high oil prices, and that will continue, I guess. And again, as long as there is no clarity on, or as long as there is this talk about sanctions on oil, Russian oil, now talking about gas, what to do, etc., all of that. So I think that will keep the prices high, I guess. And now with everything that is happening on the supply, other places, and the supply side on other places.
Where do you think that intersects, just to finish off with, inevitably countries like Lebanon already economically stressed for all sorts of reasons, but now the price of food and other elements are coming in to put extra weight, and the outlook for global economic growth is sort of dampening all the time. Do we get to a point where oil price and global recession start to collide, or where do you think that goes?
Look, there are two opinions in the region, for the region. Some saying that there won't be protests on the streets because people are so tired from protesting, revolting, and not getting anywhere. And others are saying, no, this is too much, and there will be some revolutions or some protests on the streets. For now, we're just seeing small, like a bit of like both. But I think it is like very critical to watch and see where we're going. Like places like in Tunisia, full collapse. Places like Lebanon, full collapse. Other places, less and less. But I don't know. Like it's really. We're not sure. I don't know. We're just looking and seeing what's happening. And
well, the most vulnerable country, I mean, in terms of there's a lot of vulnerability, but we are seeing a lot of money flow from the Gulf into Egypt to support the outlook for Egypt, given the vulnerability to food prices there. We'll wrap it up. We're gone way over time. Not often we do that, but inevitably these are very important, big subjects. Narendra, you're awesome. We love having you. Thank you so much for your insights and your positioning. We look forward to continuing that conversation. Omar, as always, Rockstar Monday mornings, calling it as it is, up 10% last week. I hope you betted well on that. And Laurie, thank you so much from Lebanon. Great to have your insights as always. Here every morning, 10:30 UAE time. And for those who are celebrating all of the holidays, Ramadan, Hanukkah, not Hanukkah, was it Passover, and of course Easter. You know, and is there any holidays in India at the moment, Narendra?
Of course, we have called Navratras.
Navratras, okay.
And Navroz in Iran.
Okay. Well, happy that as well. Thank you, everybody. Catch up with you every day, 10:30 UAE time. All the best.